I'm super curious. Like, there's one image that really jumps out at me of the body. I think it's like a skeleton, and then you've got these little flame. It's a
Oh yes, the
stop
bones.
motion.
Yeah,
Yeah, the bone pain, and you've got all these little fires. And I thought
yeah.
anybody looking at that, like over the age of 4, is going to exactly know what that means. It was so crystal clear and just communicates so well what you're going through. Welcome to the Dr. Eleanor Stein Podcast. In this show, you will hear expert medical professionals, researchers, and people with lived experience share science-based, low to no cost strategies to help people with complex chronic diseases. Listen in for another dose of education, empowerment, and hope. Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Ellie Stein, host of the Dr. Eleanor Stein Podcast. Today, I'm really pleased to welcome my special guest, Ari Moretz. She is an artist, writer, filmmaker, and change maker, and her area of interest is the narrative of disabilities and chronic illness. What got me connected with Ari at this moment is she is the director and producer of an amazing documentary called Life in the Bubble. When Ari sent me the link, I honestly couldn't stop watching the video. I watched it from beginning to end, barely without taking a breath. I was so amazed at the impact of her personal story, but also her ability to transform her own experience into art that is so accessible and evocative. So I'm thrilled to have Ari with me. Welcome to the podcast, Ari.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I would love to start with the documentary if you're okay with that. Like, what was the motivation, and then what's kind of been the process for you?
Well, the motivation actually kind of came about when I first got sick, like when I first found out about the rare diseases that I have. I really
Hmm.
wanted to connect with other people like me, and there was no way of doing that
Mm,
at the time. So that didn't actually end up happening for a long time. I had a lot of doctor's appointments get in the way of a lot of things. So I left my ex-husband, and that was actually what helped get the fire lit under my bum to go down that road. But the process itself took a really long time, getting to the point of actually applying for the grant through Story Hive and Tellus, which I'm very grateful that they were able to give me that grant so that I could make the film. Once that happened, then the process began. Most people would assume that with film stuff, you just go, you film it, and then it's out that year, and that's not how it works at all. It actually takes a lot longer than that. So I ended up having to work with a mentor, and she helped me along the process, which was basically like writing out the idea. What is the purpose of that? What is the reason I want to make this film for?
hmm
And what kind of impact do I want to leave behind with it? And initially, what I wanted to do was show what illness is like. And to some degree, I still think that's a good idea, but I also didn't want to overload the viewer. So I
hmm
decided to not do that. I decided to go down the realm of this is my life, but I also cope this way because art is a major part of my life. And without it, I honestly don't know where I would be. So doing the
Yeah.
film and filming all of that stuff took a really, really long time.
Just the art that you created for the film, or maybe you were creating and you included in the film, just looking at each one of those pieces, I could just imagine tens, if not hundreds of hours going into it.
Yeah, it was a lot of hours. Some of the stuff I had created prior to making the documentary, some of it was during the documentary. The stop motion was for the documentary in particular, and that process itself takes forever because it's moving a little bit of clay a little bit at a time to make it turn into a moving picture essentially. And that's actually something I discovered after my divorce was stop motion and playing around with clay because that helped me to cope with that whole process of being divorced and being chronically ill and starting my life again. So I'm very blessed to have had the opportunity to make the film and that it's now
Hmm.
out there. During the process, though, I didn't feel like I didn't
You
feel like
didn't feel
that.
so blessed.
No, dealing with the chronic illness and then being in school, I just kind of felt like it was a lot because it was a lot. And it's a lot of meetings with people, with the production team. It's a lot of meetings with the mentor. It's a lot of meetings with like Story Hive and Tell Us stuff. And then lots of emails and doing a raw cut, a rough cut, a fine cut, a final cut. So there's like a lot of different cuts the film went through, and then doing bonus content. So the film took 2 years to make.
Hmm.
And then I submitted everything, and then it took about a year or two for it to come out. So the film process itself is a very long process, but it's definitely one I'm grateful I did, and it makes me want to make more films. It's
Really.
just hopefully I'll be able to do that from inside of my bubble.
So what is some of those questions that you had to get straight in your own mind? I'm really curious, like what is your main motivation for creating the film? You said it's something to do with reaching out and connecting with others.
Yeah, it is reaching out and connecting with others. As someone who has tried to end their own life because of all of the illnesses I have and the isolation I've faced, I don't want other people to get there either. Like it's a really dark
Right.
place, and I feel like it's not something that's discussed a lot personally.
Hmm.
And it was a hard thing to talk about in my film, but at the same time, I know those dark thoughts do come when you have illness and when family members leave you high and dry, or your spouse leaves you high and dry, or your friends leave, and your circle becomes very, very small. You have a lot of time to think. And I don't think thinking those thoughts is a good thing. But the reality is, some of us do think those thoughts, and having like a healthy coping mechanism, like art for myself, has
Hmm.
brought me out of those moments and brought me back to life.
So really, in essence, this documentary, although like you say, it deals with some very heavy topics,
Mhm.
severe multiple rare illnesses, struggling with hope and suicidal ideation at times, I think even attempts you've
Mhm.
talked about. Um, but in the end, I really felt like it was a message of hope because you were able to show how you've used art and I'm going to say all of your other strengths, right? Art is the manifestation to cope with that and make it into something like meaningful and beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I do want to be, I guess, like a message of hope. That is also something that I would like to do is give other people hope, hope to keep living, hope to keep pursuing the things that you want to do. I made a documentary from inside of my house, so anything is possible.
Wow, that is amazing. I
Thanks.
wonder if we can just maybe take a step back
Mhm.
to kind of the experience, what it's been like for you. I don't know exactly the timeline or kind of the different things that you've coped with medically, and not to go into extreme depth, but just to give people an idea. I think hope is always tied to reality, right? So if they
Mhm.
kind of know a bit about your story, they're going to go, wow, if this is possible for her, maybe it's possible for me.
Okay. Well, in 2008, I was diagnosed with metastasized cancer, which was thyroid cancer, and it had spread into my lymph nodes and muscle. Had a 6.5 hour surgery. I had radioactive iodine. And then in 2012, I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos, followed by, wow, I tripped over that. Good. Followed by, I'll try that again. So I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos in 2012, and then I think it was 2013, I was diagnosed with mast cell activation syndrome, and then it took a little bit to get diagnosed with the hyperadrenergic postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, because that one's a little more rare than the other kinds of POTS, but that one tends to correlate with the mast cell activation. So
Hmm.
having that lovely umbrella of things has definitely made life very difficult and has led to difficult relationships because people don't understand the stuff that I have, and because they can't see it, therefore it does not exist. But the reality is, it does exist. It impacts my life regularly. And regardless of what other people think they know about my situation, it doesn't change the reality of it.
Yeah. And what exactly led you to be in the bubble that you talk about? That's kind of the theme of the documentary.
Yeah,
Yeah, what's the bubble like?
well, it's basically just 2 rooms and a bathroom. It's nothing massive by any means.
Yeah.
But it is a home. It's a place where I basically have a medical grade purifier that helps to keep me safe from all sorts of allergens and molds and anything
Hmm.
that would off gas in the place itself. So the reason I am in the bubble is because of mast cell activation syndrome, which causes me to have anaphylactic or anaphylactoid responses to a plethora of things, and even things that I could potentially deem as safe may not be safe. And so it makes it really hard to have company because having someone in my space, if they have Gain laundry detergent on, as an example, or any kind of perfume, or maybe they were around scented candles, that stuff
Yeah.
could end up affecting me for a day to a week to a month.
Yeah. So I know with other people who have MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, and multiple chemical sensitivity, there's just so much uncertainty, and that
Mhm.
often feeds fear because you just never know when the next trigger is going to happen.
Yeah, which is problematic because then it makes me not want to leave. I get tons of anxiety every time I have to leave the
Mm,
house for a doctor's appointment or medical test because I never know what someone in that office is going to be wearing. So I do double mask and I have like gloves if I feel very unsafe that day that I'll wear and that kind of stuff. And even then, I could do everything right and still have a problem. But fear is definitely a big part of it. And having had a lot of really weird allergic reactions that even doctors have said, I've never seen this before, just kind of fuels that fire of fear, I suppose.
So if I gave you the opportunity to say, Ari, what kind of message do you want to give, say, to healthcare practitioners about people like you and about keeping their offices scent free or safe? What would that message be?
Please be scent free.
Pretty
Please try to
please. Yeah.
enforce it on your staff more than anything because I have been in
Hmm.
hospitals and had nurses have perfume on. So please enforce it in your staff and encourage patients to do it. I know they can't guarantee it, but it would be ideal for them to even just wear one of those paint suit things if they
Hmm.
have fragrance on them to go into the office, and then that protects other people like me. Okay.
Yeah, that's a really strong message, and I hope people take it to heart because I think, like you said, when people can't see the problem, like you can't see a scent, and it could
Yeah.
be so tiny compared to what the average person might react to, there's a lot of dismissal.
Oh, there is with people I've known over the years as well as people in the medical field, and
Hmm.
it doesn't make you feel safe. It doesn't make you want to leave the house.
So how maybe talk you talk in the documentary a little bit about the impact that the need to be in the bubble has had on your relationships. And that seems like such an important aspect of chronic illness that maybe doesn't get enough attention. If you could kind of elaborate a little bit on maybe from your own experience, but also people you know that have gone through it.
Well, I know for myself that being progressively getting worse as I have over the years, it's really made it difficult to have relationships with people, friends, or even romantic relationships because I'm met with a
Mhm.
lot of disbelief. And when they finally see that I have a problem and I'm doing some sort of convulsy shaking thing on the floor and then blacking out, then they believe it. It's like they have to see it to believe it, but then they get scared
Right.
and it's like, oh, this is terrifying. This is real. Yes, did you think I was making it up? Like it's one of those things that it impacts the relationship in many ways because people either go into caregiver mode and like they want to fix you or they white knight and then they figure that they can fix you and you just need to do
Right.
yoga or you need to do this or you need to eat this diet, raw meat all the time or like I've had all
Mm,
sorts of stuff suggested to me, but that's not going to fix it. Like so that kind of idea as well from people thinking that the medical system can fix everything when it
right.
can't. Like there's no fix all. I've even had doctors tell me there's no silver bullet. We can't shoot you with something and just boom, you're better. Like it is what it is. It's learning to cope with it and then
Yeah.
finding someone who's willing to learn about it, but also make sacrifices like fragrance or not eat certain foods. because it is an allergy. So it's having that understanding, which personally I have not found people that have understood that, and they're not willing to make the sacrifices. So I don't allow people in.
Wow.
And that sucks to say out loud, but it's true.
So I'm just thinking of, kind of that delicate balance of relationships. On the one hand, you want them to care and
Hmm.
accommodate to things that are really important, like the allergens. On the other hand, you use the word white knight, like you don't want them to come charging in and try to fix and kind of almost take agency or control away from you. Sounds like a really fine balance.
It is, and it's having people understand that no, you can't fix me, but yes, you can still be there for me in these ways. Like
Hmm.
maybe you could help me go to a doctor's appointment. We could try out a friendship that way if you're willing to try to be fragrance free, and then I could be in your car. But
Hmm.
if you've been using fragrance in your car for the last 6 months, there's no way I can be in your car. Like you need to change that. Like you need to not be using it and use defragrancy stuff like activated carbon and charcoal and baking soda to pull the smells out. And then
Yeah.
eventually maybe I can try your car.
So the good friends that you do have, what do they do that really works for you?
They don't come over. I don't I
Okay.
I don't have anyone over. I haven't had anyone over and I don't know how long. And it sucks again to say that out loud, but a lot of them either have wives or husbands or kids, and they can't guarantee my safety. Not only am I
Right.
allergic to the outside world fragrance wise, but I'm immunocompromised because they took out a bunch of my lymph nodes. So being around someone who has kids is not feasible. Like I could pick
Right.
up stuff. And that also means me having to be hyper vigilant with wiping everything down after someone's been here and that kind of stuff. So if I'm already not feeling good, adding that on top is a no-go. So it would
Yeah.
really be someone that needs to follow a regime or protocol to
Yeah.
keep me safe, to understand why they're doing that to keep me safe, and then they could come over. So most of the people I hang out with are online and video games.
Hmm.
I think that's actually the majority of people I hang out with is online and video games because everything else just seems to not work. And if I do have meetings or I try to do things online, it's over Zoom.
I was just thinking Zoom is a bit of an equalizer, right? So
Mhm.
we both have blurred backgrounds. People can't really see where we are, the big mess just off to the side or
Yeah.
things like that. And you're kind of taken at face value on Zoom, I think, maybe in a way that in person is more challenging. Of course, it's possible, but more challenging.
Yeah, I also wear a mask. So like even if I
Right.
was to go out to a social gathering or a networking event, this is all you see. And then people are less likely to approach me. And I'm not a
Yeah.
very talkative, extroverted person. So it's very
Hmm.
hard for me to like go to something like that and try to chat. And then if I have to leave, then it's like, oh, she left early, or people don't even notice that I was there. So it's problematic to try to meet people
Yeah,
as
I can
well.
really, really see that. I remember, when my multiple chemical sensitivity was pretty bad, I was wearing a mask. Not every time I went out, but if I went to any kind of public place with lots of people, and you really become aware of how it's a barrier.
Yeah, like I've been invited to like family gatherings or whatever, and I have to mask. Like
Yeah.
it's been like that forever. So I can't eat, I can't drink food. I can't drink food. Oh my goodness, I said that backwards.
I get it. Yeah.
I can't eat or drink or anything. So if someone offers me, oh, I made these cookies. Well, no, like I can't have those. Or, oh, here, have a drink. Or what would you like to drink? Or even if someone was driving me somewhere in their car and said, stopped at the Tim Hortons, oh, you want to drink your coffee? No, I can't. Like, what if you're sick? So, and then
Yeah.
I have had people tell me I'm being paranoid, which doesn't help, but I have gotten sick really bad. And I've talked about getting sneezed on by a little one many, many years ago in the face. They sneezed in my face, and I got obstructed in my throat and was coughing up stuff and choking on it. And that was just from them having a common cold.
Yeah.
So I'm not willing to put my health at risk to make other people comfortable anymore.
Ari, one of the most frequent questions I've been asked, in my years as a medical doctor seeing people is how to explain these complex chronic diseases to other people. And I was wondering if you had any wisdom to share in that regard.
You could always draw a picture for them.
I
Like
guess that's what you've done,
that's
right?
kind of what I've done with my film. It's
Right.
kind of shown little things. I do have ideas of stuff I'd like to do, which I won't say on here in case it doesn't happen.
Okay.
But I do have ideas of things I'd like to do to show what it's like and explain it a little better with like that kind of stuff with illustration, art form, whether it's video or whatnot. But it's also like dumbing it down to an extent because when you list off a big name like hyperadrenergic pops, people are like, what is that? And then it's like, well, it's hard to explain it. And so I'll be like, oh, it's blood pressure related. Like my blood pressure goes too high when I stand up, I pass out. Well, why?
Mm,
Well, it's because my autonomic nervous system doesn't work properly. And as soon as you say that, people are like, I don't know what that is. So
right.
it's like, okay, so then it's even trying to, I guess, put it more in layman terms even more, which is just
Hmm.
my heart and my brain don't communicate and they fight and then I pass out. So that's kind of what I ended up coming up with. So,
And I think that's such a perfect segue to your documentary because we're going to show some of your images as we're talking. So by now, hopefully, people have gotten a bit of a sense how you have tried to explain it to people. And I'm super curious, like there's one image that really jumps out at me of the body. I think it's like a skeleton, and then you've got these little flame. It's a
oh yes, the
stop
bones.
motion.
Yeah,
Yeah, the bone pain, and you've got all these little fires. And I thought
yeah.
anybody looking at that, like over the age of 4, is going to exactly know what that means. It was so crystal clear and just communicates so well what you're going through.
That took me so long to make. Sorry. I just went back to making it on my desk. It does. It is bone pain. Like bone pain feels like your bones are on fire. It's the only thing I could
Hmm.
correlate it with, and that's why I turned it into that stop motion because it hurts so much. It feels like my bones are trying to burn away my flesh. And that happens from fragrance for me.
Wow. Yeah. So I really hope that people watch your documentary. Of course, we're going to link to it in
Excellent.
the show notes. Goes without saying, and that they really maybe if the words don't land, because they can't maybe it's hard for someone who's never had this experience,
Mhm.
but maybe the images will. I was also thinking there's another great, like you're so multi-talented. So you've got the claymation and you've got like fabric art and you've got this quilt that you made with all of these, I would say, faces
Yeah.
of different aspects of the illness. I don't know if you want to talk about your quilt at all.
So the quilt is actually like a story of being born and then dying. So like the
Oh,
entire thing is
okay.
like all of the emotions that one goes through with chronic illness, the not being believed, the isolation, feeling like you're disappearing. Because in the quilt, there's some embroidery pieces that are very
Yeah.
like simplistic, and they're just kind of like line embroidery, just to show like the fading away of oneself, because we die to our old self in a way. We get rid
Hmm.
of the person that we were before illness and we become someone new, essentially.
Hmm.
So through that process of making that quilt, there's a lot of drawing and then a lot of transferring that onto cotton by an iron-on and then sewing it all together and putting the batting on. And there's actually a old kind of way that I tied it together, which is called quilt tying. So you basically put like a needle through it and the batting in the back, and then you
Okay.
pull the yarn through and then you tie it. Whereas
Wow.
nowadays, that's like a dying art form. Most people will use a quilting machine and quilt top it. Those things are
Yep.
really expensive. And so no, but also like the quilt tying is something my mom learned from her mom, who learned from her mom, who learned from her mom. So it's like a
Wow.
putting it down traditionally, I
So
guess.
it's also kind of respecting ancestors and
Yeah.
maybe bringing their voice a little bit to the fore as well.
Yeah. And then around the outside of it, I put a bunch of ribbon, because when I get nervous, I actually have ribbon
Worry ribbons.
that I just hold on to. Um, I keep it in my pocket and whatnot, and then I just always have it with me. So I put it all around the outside because it's a part of me as well. So it is a story of life lived with illness, but I know we're all gonna pass away at some point. But before then, I want to make a difference.
Well, I think this documentary is definitely, I don't know, a step in that direction, or it's definitely a difference for people who watch it. It's very impactful. There was another image that you sent me of, I don't know if you're in it or not, but it's like this big red dress and you can't see a face. At least I couldn't. So I'm really curious about that. Are you in it or is it on a
No, no.
mannequin?
No,
Oh,
that's on a
okay.
mannequin.
Okay.
I have a mannequin. It's a little wobbly,
Okay.
the mannequin. So I tried to take the picture quickly before it fell over. But that one is like a representation of like female anatomy to some degree, and basically like that idea that women don't have rights to their body because they don't everywhere in the world. They don't, and that's a
Hmm.
reality. And so it's kind of a pushing back against that. That's why there's like teeth along the side around the bottom there, just to
Hmm.
kind of be like it's mine, back off. Because a lot of the time in society we're pushed towards being very feminine, or we're pushed towards, ideals of what men think we should do with our bodies. So that's kind of that one's a lot more about femininity.
Yeah. And it's gorgeous and
Thank you.
it's very powerful. Are there any other images or parts of the documentary that you'd really like to bring forward?
There's the brain fog part. Like I made a
Mm,
little stop motion of the
right.
brain because brain fog is a real thing. And when that fog rolls in, it's really hard to think. Like, where do I
Yeah.
go? What am I doing? What was I doing? I've forgotten full on appointments. I've forgotten Zoom meetings I have. I've forgotten things I had due. And then it'll be the day after, and I'll be like, oh no. So that brain fog is definitely an impactor on myself and many others for sure.
And that's another hidden disability, right? Even if people see you breaking out in hives and convulsing and passing out, they can't see what's going on in your brain and how, people talk about kind of fighting to get through the fog just to get some clarity of thought and to be able to communicate.
Yeah. That actually, with the blacking out reminds me of some information that was given to me recently about Kounis syndrome, which is a allergic type heart attack.
Okay. How do you spell it, Ari?
C or not C, sorry, Kounis.
Okay. I haven't heard of it. So tell us about that.
So this actually can cause you to have an allergic type heart attack. Essentially, you have an allergy and your symptoms present as a heart attack. They've documented it for people that have been stung by bees or wasps and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
I've been having blackouts for over 16 years, and a paramedic friend of mine suggested I get tested for it. So while I'm waiting for that testing, I've actually done a little experimenting on myself, which I don't recommend for other people, but
Don't
given
do
my
this at home. Yeah.
don't do this at home, but for my what I have going on, and I've actually stopped probably over 20 blackouts because of using Benadryl, which is something my allergist, immunologist said I could do. And I
Hmm.
did it and I stopped them. So I might have cardiac involvement.
Wow. Well, good for you because anything you can do to block or decrease symptoms is like a win, right?
Well, it's interesting because I've been looked at for seizures for so long.
Hmm.
And so because of that, when I got that information from my paramedic friend, I was like, I'm gonna try what it says on this sheet, which is the Benadryl. And it had other like it has steroids on there, which I don't have. So I was like, I'll just try the Benadryl, see if it stops it. And it did. So it's a positive step in the right direction of hopefully stopping those altogether.
Yeah, that would be great. I wonder if we can just shift a little
Yeah.
bit back to finish talking about the documentary and
Mhm.
like what was, so you had the idea. It sounds like somewhere along the way you got a mentor and it sounds like that person was really helpful in kind of guiding you with some of the concrete steps you had to do. I was just curious, how did you find that person? Was that through the
Um,
TELUS program?
yeah, yeah. So through TELUS and Story Hive, they give you a mentor, and then the
Hmm.
mentor helps you like navigate the film scene kind of. So they
Yeah.
can suggest like, what kind of cameras to use or who to get things from and that kind of thing. There's actually someone else that I know that's in film, and she's how I got the production company that I worked with.
Hmm.
So, and they're amazing. Alpacalypse is what they're called. And which is a really cool name. My
Yeah.
co-director, Gabby, he he did an amazing job with like the editing and just helping me a lot with that process as well.
Right. And he's shown in the film, yes?
No,
Oh, he's not.
no, Gabby
Okay.
is not. No,
He's behind the
he's
scenes
all
only.
behind the scenes. He did an amazing job editing and helped me to connect with the person who did the score for the film as well. So it's very,
Wow.
very
What
amazing.
would you say you feel the best about? Like now that you've done it. To me, whenever I see a film, whether it's a small production like yours or something at the movie theater, and there's so many people involved, I'm like, my gosh, how do all those moving parts fit together to make this amazing finished product? So I'm just curious, like, what do you feel was your biggest success? Maybe the challenge that you overcame or the biggest learning?
Um, I guess learning just how long documentaries take, but then
Hmm.
also no matter what I thought might be good in it, turned out to not be good in it.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
so being able to like step away from that and be like, okay, like I thought we could go this way with it, but then once it started to basically take its own life, like it turned, not
Wow.
take its own life, it took on its own life.
I understand. Yep.
Thank you. You my
Mm.
dyslexic brain.
Film arrested. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, yeah, it took on its own life and it changed because, like I said earlier, I wanted it to be more about like this is what the illness is like, but it felt so heavy doing that.
Hmm.
Like, I think people would have stopped watching it. As much as I don't want to be an inspiration documentary, it is to some degree, which is good because I do want people to find hope. I do want people to have hope. But initially, I wanted it to be more like, this is how crappy illness is. Look at
Yeah.
it, which I feel like could be a good art project more so than a documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I had a question, but it flew out of my mind. There goes the brain fog.
Oh no.
Um, yeah, so maybe just to wrap up, any final messages that you want to leave people with? And maybe people that are suffering like you have been.
It's falling. Final messages. That's, yeah, that's, I don't know.
Maybe that's too big a question. There's so much in the film.
I think I think we all have purpose, and I think part of the thing when we're dealing with illness is that we lose sight of that. Some of us may
Hmm.
think that our purpose is our job before we get sick, and then we get sick and we lose that job, and therefore we lose our purpose. But I think through the process of getting sick, I found my purpose. And I
Mm,
feel like that is to be an advocate for myself and others, and also encourage people to continue to work towards their dreams and no matter what those look like. Because I feel like if we put limitations on ourselves and say that something is too small or too big, and then we can't do it, we're already defeating ourselves. And I have some pretty big dreams, and I'm not going to quit until I do them. And you shouldn't either.
amazing. So if
Thanks.
people want, I know you've in addition to this, you've also started a podcast.
I
Do you want
did,
to tell
yeah.
people about that?
Well, it's called Chronic Heart to Heart, which is a podcast that I've had for a bit, but because of the documentary, I had to put it on the back burner because it
Okay.
was just getting to be a bit too much. I do have an open call, so if anyone is interested in being on it and wants to talk about their experience with any chronic illness, you're more than welcome to be on it, as well as mental health illnesses
Okay.
as well. Everyone is welcome.
And what's the best way for people to find you?
I have a lot of social media avenues. I go by
Hmm.
Villain Ari online.
I love that.
The reason for that is because you're generally villainized when you push back against society. So
Got it.
that's why I went with that name.
I love it.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. And
Thank
again,
you.
we'll put links to all those things so people can connect with you because that what it sounds like the main purpose of doing all this is to connect, right? So
Yes.
I want to try to facilitate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on the Dr. Eleanor Stein podcast. I hope you are taking away new strategies and ideas to improve your health and a renewed sense of hope. Join me, Dr. Eleanor Stein, for our next episode. Can't wait? Check out my website for a wealth of free resources.